Initially, people had no idea what our vision and strategy were. Just because it's in my head and I mentioned it once at a company-wide meeting, I assumed that everyone knew where we're headed, how we're going to get there, our purpose, our mission, our vision. Nobody had a clue. Even one comment said, "What the hell does Brent do all day?"
Welcome to the Greencastle Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Kleck. We have on today Brent Gleeson. Brent's all over YouTube. He is a former Navy SEAL who took his experience in the special operations world, parlayed that in some great business experience, and started his company, his current company, Taking Point Leadership, where he's assembled a great team of academics and military leaders, and they're doing great things for their clients out there. He also has really good hair, much better hair than I could, well, probably than I've ever had. But he's a great, funny guy. He's got a lot of great insights on how to manage through change, how to look inside yourself, some great tips on leadership. He's a New York Times best-selling author. His book, Taking Point. He's got another book coming out, Embrace the Suck. We're excited to have him on today. Stick around. You're going to want to hear this one.
This individuality stuff is a bunch of crap.
There's a reason why.
A master of innovation.
The key to this growing is you.
Any rational person would give up.
I can't disagree with that.
Make sure that we're not prisoners of our own experiences.
You need a team of great people.
Will not tolerate a loser.
What they need is a common vision.
Helping organizations win one veteran at a time. This is the Greencastle Podcast.
All right, Brett, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, man. You and I, we went back and forth over email talking about, getting on Zoom calls and things like that over in COVID, and whether or not you dress up and whether or not you still try and present what kind of image you're trying to present. And so I broke out this shirt specifically just for this. I picked this up at a Goodwill. That's just for you.
I love it, brother.
This is like straight out of like Jimmy Walker Dynamite. It's I think it's authentic. I looked at the tag and had one of those tags from like the 70s era, like one of the old J.C. Penney tags on, yeah. And it is hotter than Hades wearing this thing. It's like 100% polyester. These collars are enough to put somebody's eye out, but you
could soar off the roof of a building with those things.
I probably could. People talk about popping your collar. We gotta be careful. I'll poke somebody's eye. But because we had talked about what a weird world coronavirus is, and projecting an image of professionalism, and especially being in the leadership consulting space, where do you draw the line? Where something I think is fascinating, and I'd be curious to hear your experiences. So I was listening to some of your talks on YouTube. And you talk a lot about authentic leadership, and especially in today's day and age, as sure. Millennials become decision makers and move into the C-suite realm, and even as Gen Z moves in, the generations that are coming up, they want authenticity. It's not like what our grandparents grew up in, in the Industrial Revolution era, where it's like, do this because I said so. They want to see leaders that have emotional intelligence and have authenticity, and I think one of the great things that we're seeing in coronavirus times is that you see these leaders who are on these Zoom calls and their kids interrupt, or they get up. They're
real people.
Yeah. All of a sudden they're real people, or their IT doesn't work, or they get up to walk out and they're just wearing like some
shorts.
They're wearing some PT shorts or something. How has and it's probably a good segue right into it. How has leadership changed here in coronavirus for the better or the worse?
Well, it's changed significantly. Obviously, the fundamentals stay the same. And I know you've experienced this, when I transitioned out of the SEAL teams and became an entrepreneur or building companies, both of my first two companies were technology focused. So a large portion of our workforce, the second company grew to about 200 across 3 offices from a headcount perspective. We had about probably 75% millennial in our workforce. And I had to really lean into analyzing my own leadership and management style, because this will shock you. So stand by. You can't manage millennials the same way you do a SEAL platoon. Who knew? Empathy and emotional intelligence come into play. And, we have obviously I had to learn all of this stuff through some pretty rigorous 360 review processes and some obviously coaching and mentorship of my own. But now in this new environment, obviously in a lot of organizations today, and we were just on the phone with Google earlier, and they imagine you think Google, well, they've got it locked on, but they're having us do a session kind of like this, kind of a virtual keynote to talk to some of their senior leaders about leading through adversity in this time and keeping their teams engaged and keeping people energized, and a workforce that was already at the bitter end of burnout before coronavirus. And now when we have engagement at its average in most organizations, even well-run organizations, is only about 34%. Can you imagine what it is now? I haven't seen the data, but I would imagine it's dipped significantly down to about 3 to 4%, probably a little higher. We don't know. Different across organizations, but we've seen, obviously, my first priority was to shift our own team towards figuring this out. And one of the things we've done is dramatically increase our level of communication and doing it like this, face to face. We don't use our conference line anymore. We do everything over Zoom because people need that social interaction that they don't get. Now, obviously, in some organizations that are built around working remote, this probably hasn't impacted them that much. But for the majority of organizations, large and small out there, people go to the office and enjoy going to the office, and they enjoy the interaction with their peers and an in-person live collaborative environment. And since we can't do that now and for the foreseeable future, we have to do it like this. And it's different, maybe a little uncomfortable for organizations at first. It's harder to keep people engaged. We talk about that too, not just in a meeting situation, but if we're doing a keynote or something like that, or some of the live events we've done to raise money for the SEAL Family Foundation, you can see the data and see the average span of an hour session. The average time someone's logged in is only about 15 or 20 minutes. So regardless of the content or who's on, I interviewed General James Madison, the other day, and wasn't nervous at all about that. I was wearing a jacket for that one. Yeah. I was wearing PT shorts, but I was like sweating before. I was like, I can't believe I'm interviewing this guy. What if I say something stupid?
He's an intimidating guy, right? You're like, even across.
He was so cool. I mean, he was so cool. We did a rehearsal. He's just a down, just a genuine guy. Very, very nice. Just a head full of amazing wisdom. Right. But we try to practice what we preach. So we've done what we've done for our own team. We've done with our current clients, and we've had to take everything virtual. We've increased the level of communication and doing as much possible work that we can do in this type of setting. But leadership in general has had to change, and the burden of command that already existed is more complex in this environment. So I'm sure we'll get into the details of that in a bit. But
yeah, no, it's interesting that you talk about Google in particular, and we could list any one number of clients, but sometimes you and I probably both experience the same thing. It's interesting that you say Google, you would think has it locked down, and yet they are investing in leadership development. And to me, it just goes to show the better organizations, the ones that are really progressive, and this is more of a question than a statement. The ones that are really progressive recognize that they lack that hubris, and they embrace that self-awareness, going, well, we just had a leadership development. I've had clients before say, we just had leadership development. And you go, well, it's not an event that finishes like on a hard point. It's not like we just
ongoing.
Dusted our hands.
But that's what most organizations do. They check the box.
And some of the leaders that need is some, just a different lens or just a different take on leadership. The most are the ones who maybe sometimes say, well, I have that. We just did leadership, and you're like, well, it's not a fixed point in time, right? I don't know if you've experienced anything like that, or how you have worked with clients to say we can continue to get better. And how do you get guys out of their own way, I guess, or gals? How do you get people out of their own way sometimes when that hubris sets in with leaders?
Well, it's interesting because our organization, Taking Point Leadership, began with just with keynotes. And which is great, but an event, as you just said, is not going to transform an organization. That's why I don't like the term motivational speaking and things like that, because motivation is fleeting. What's going to be impactful for an organization, and a passion of mine is organizational transformation, change management, change leadership, is years in the making. It's an an investment of time and resources that's part of the business strategy, not just an event here, or we brought in a consultant last quarter, or we did this event, or a few of our executives went to, took an online course from ABC University. As you know, being in the space, the best leaders are lifelong learners. And obviously they take accountability and ownership over their own development, but organizations also have to invest in that. And the best organizations out there, and there's research that shows this, are investing heavily in the development of their middle managers, because the middle managers essentially own the engagement of the majority of the organization. And that's one of their burdens of command, is to keep their teams engaged. Obviously engagement, we always ask our clients, well, what drives, when we start off a leadership and organizational development program, at the end of the day, we don't work with nonprofits, we work with for-profit organizations, and we say, well, what drives profit? We call it the service profit chain. I'm sure you know about this, but it's, you back down into the root cause of what really drives profit. Well, profit, the number one driver of profit is customer retention. Well, customer retention is driven by customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is driven by quality. Quality is driven by highly engaged people doing great work. Well, you only have highly engaged people doing great work when you have great leadership, not management, but leadership. Yeah. And so kind of making that business case for leadership and leadership development, and taking it back to P&L performance. If you and I do what we do, and it's not impacting the P&L performance and profitability and growth, and then probably doing it wrong, or the organization not taking it seriously, or both. But it takes an ongoing and sometimes different approach in different organizations. It's not it's not a one size fits all. It's not the same strategy for every organization. Every organization has different goals, different demographics within their workforce that cause different challenges. And now, obviously, I argue in my new book that comes out in December that bad things don't happen in threes. I'm gonna have to go back and rewrite that part, because we now know that bad things do come in threes. Global pandemic, recession, nationwide rioting. There it is, scientifically proven. Bad things happen in threes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say murder hornets. I thought that was the number.
So they happen in force. Yeah, there we go.
So research the data.
Yeah. But so that's kind of how we approach it with a lot of our clients. But the best organizations with the best leaders, those leaders take total ownership over their development as well, outside of the work. They're avid readers. They study leadership. They have mentors. They invest in coaching outside of the office, and are constantly finding new ways to develop themselves.
You hit on a point that I read your first book. I know your second book doesn't come out till later this year. I read your first book, Taking Point, and in it you talk a lot about ego and being one of those one of the precluding factors, right, to change, right? Because a big part of the book is about change and managing through change. But interesting, and I don't think I knew this going in, but to the book, that you really don't focus just a lot on external change, but change starts from inside. I'm curious to hear you, and people can read the book and get more in depth, but I'm curious to hear where you see how change is going to, or managing change, how that's changing in a post-COVID environment. Is it still the same, or is it, back in February, I think very few people would say, okay, I would have to plan to evolve and change through this. How does change look going forward? Is it introspective? Is it holistic for the organization, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, good question. There's several pieces to that, so I'll kind of take it in the order in which you asked. Obviously, first, yes, it is largely inward looking, to the leader. Take one individual leader, around self-awareness and emotional intelligence, understanding what they need to fix within themselves and develop. I remember this was with my the beginning of my second company, and we were tripling in size and revenue every year, healthily growing headcount, opening new offices, and clearly there were no threats on the horizon. But I was like, you know what, let's get some, we come from the SEAL teams. We believe in brutally honest, transparent feedback, right? You might get punched in the face, but we try to leave with rank and emotion at the door.
Yeah, that's right.
During those meetings. But so I was like, let's roll out a 360 review process. And for those watching, listening, don't know, that's a mechanism for a leader to get transparent feedback through a questionnaire type of platform from typically people above them, their peers, and their direct reports. And it's designed to extract data so that that leader, hopefully, takes action on creating a developmental plan and identifying areas that they can develop themselves as a leader, communicating that plan out to their peers and especially their direct reports, and making progress towards that plan so they become a better leader. And so we rolled this out. Really, it was just a validation of my awesomeness because the company was growing so well. So I was like, let's do it anyways. And so we rolled this out.
We're going to talk about hubris in just a second. That's a separate topic.
Yes. Well, so this was like getting a donkey kick to the head. So I printed this thing out. I was hopping on a plane from San Diego to New York, and I opened this thing up. I'm like, yeah, let's order a cocktail and let's look at all the great feedback.
Let's validate what I already know. Yeah.
Yeah, they were just validating what I already know. And let's just say there was a lot in there and big stuff. People asking, saying, like they really get you in the comments, the areas where you can put extra commentary in there where they get really specific, where they stick the knife in and twist.
And that's what good leaders know. On the next questionnaire, we just remove the comments section.
Exactly. I'm like, first of all, I know who said that. They're getting fired. Like, I know you're not supposed to use it for that. But there were comments in there in all seriousness. Literally, people had no idea what our vision and strategy were. Just because it's in my head and I mentioned it once at a company-wide meeting, I assumed that everyone knew where we're headed, how we're going to get there, our purpose, our mission, our vision. Nobody had a clue. Even one comment said, "What the hell does Brent do all day?" It's like,
oh boy.
So, but I, coming from the background that we do, accountability is the number one culture pillar. So I extracted all the insights I could. I built a presentation. I presented it back to the organization, making sure that I was hearing what I thought I was hearing to gain total insight on the feedback. And it wasn't just feedback about me. It was just about the organization in general and things we could improve. Tons of valuable information. But the important thing after that is to take action, not just for yourself, but for the organization as a whole. If you don't take action, it's worse than not doing it at all. It literally has a detrimental effect on the organization. Because people are like, yes, my voice is being heard. I'm getting to provide deep insight into the organization, how leaders can improve. And then when you don't do anything, they're like, oh, that was a totally inauthentic gesture. They don't mean it. And your morale goes down. Now, from an organizational development standpoint and leading through change, as you know, most significant transformation strategies and implementations, about 70% of them typically fail or fall significantly short of meeting their intended objective in a normal environment. Yeah. One of the interesting and potentially positive outcomes from the current environment that we're in is this environment is forcing us it's forcing digital transformation, it's forcing technological innovation, it's forcing creativity, it's forcing people, I hate this word, but it's forcing people to pivot on the battlefield much, much faster than they normally would because we get comfortable. And now people are getting comfortable being uncomfortable, to coin a SEAL phrase for you there, buddy. And so the organizations that get it and are aggressively attacking this, while also dealing with the financial strain and potential for layoffs or layoffs that have happened, they're innovating and they're gathering their team, they're creating a new mission plan, and they're executing violently on the battlefield just to survive. Normally organizations, what's taken 3 months for organizations that are surviving and they're going to come out of this potentially stronger would take years. And now it's going to take 4, 5, 6 months for organizations to do a lot of the things they know they should have been doing in the first place. Just we have these things on the side burner because we're so busy doing all these other things, servicing our clients, business development strategies, internal development initiatives. Well, now we have to put everything that's not a radical priority to the side. So it's really going back to that prioritize and execute mindset of anything that's out of my control, ignore it. No, not ignore it, but deprioritize it, keep an eye on it, because there might be external factors affecting the organization. But if it's not in your control, put it away. Focus on only the things that are in your control and prioritize. That's where we fall short as leaders oftentimes, especially in chaotic environments, is we try to tackle every single priority all at once. And if you have 5 to 10 priorities, you have no priorities, especially if we don't find the things that are really going to have the most positive impact on the organization in this current environment.
You kind of alluded to this. You said, forget about the things you can't control. And I think something that we hear consistently, and you see it on social media and on LinkedIn and just people talking on interviews, is that that challenge of trying to maintain, your motivation, not your motivation, but your focus, because you're trying to run the day-to-day operations, but yet you're trying to, as you said, you hate to use that the colloquial term, but pivot. I know your new book talks a lot about adversity and things like that, and that fortitude. What is that a key tenet then for folks who are trying to manage this chaos? Is it fortitude? Is it organizational skills? What is it that is going to what's going to on the end of this? What's going to separate those who thrived and those who just floated through this?
Well, yeah, selfishly, the timing of the new book is perfect. Unselfishly, it's disastrous because writing a book around resilience and mental toughness, I had no idea that going into 2020, we would need a message like that so deeply. I've actually gone back in the final edits and woven in some details about our current environment, because the content in the book, which is titled "Embrace the Suck," that term, forward by David Goggins. He was my classmate in Buds and teammate at Team 5. Everybody knows who he is. Clearly a mental toughness guru. The content of the
full of rock stars, huh? Murph was in your class at some point, right? Mike Murphy. He
got rolled for stress fractures after Hell Week, but awesome guy. David Goggins. A lot of guys who went on to our Tier 1 Special Missions Unit, and so it's 235, buddy, the last hard class.
It's funny. I was just going to say the same thing, but that's all right. We'll let you guys. You're my guest. I have to.
I'm the guest.
The guest is always right.
Yeah.
I'll do some editing afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I'm sorry. So go ahead. Yeah. So
the content of the book obviously is designed to be timeless, but this, COVID-19 is a historical event in time. So referencing it now, going back and doing some moderate referencing to that in the book as it relates to some of the tools and frameworks and models that I share in there is hopefully going to be a good, valuable guide for individuals and organizations moving into 2021 and beyond, because the ripple effects of all this are going to last for years. I hate to say that, but there's ways to live in this post-COVID-19 world. It's not COVID, like Trump said one day, one day it's just going to disappear. It'll be a miracle. It's like, no, we're just going to have to learn how to live with COVID, just like we have other types of pandemics, other types of disease and challenges that have been with us since the beginning of time. It's just a new reality that people are going to have to focus on. And the book there's 10 chapters, but it really, it's I don't like the term self-help, but really it falls into that category of individual transformation. So the first book was about organizational transformation, but as you wisely said earlier, organizations are full of people, and an organization can't change unless the people first change. We change our mindset, we change our behavior, and we put away the mindset of, well, this is how we've always done it. No, we need to continually change, just in the world of 21st century business. But now we're in a whole different landscape with new challenges. And there'll be different challenges down the road, as we all know. Different recessions, different geopolitical events that cause the world of business to go sideways. This isn't new. It feels new, but it's not really new. Just talk to people older than us out there. They have survived much worse. And that's what the book is about. It's really about gaining that perspective on what true adversity is and how to embrace adversity, control what you can, ignore what you can't, and move forward. Learn how to continually expand the boundaries of your comfort zone so that you can achieve loftier goals, navigate challenges within your life, whether they be health, marriage, raising kids, business, saving a business, anything that we face throughout our life, and essentially avoiding temptation, making better decisions, being more disciplined, more focused, greater levels of accountability, because people who really harness that type of mindset live more fulfilling lives because they achieve more of their goals. So hopefully the book proves to be a good tool and source of inspiration. But like in my previous book, it's not just storytelling. There are actual frameworks that we provide in there around goal setting, strategic planning, how to avoid temptation, how to use pain as a mental pathway towards navigating life's many challenges.
So I think when people talk about, and you said you don't like to be referred to as a motivational speaker, and I understand that, right? Because and I think when people go to motivational talks, they're like, this is only as good as the end of the talk, and then by tomorrow I'm back to my old ways, or I've forgotten half of what I. What's the there's so many people who talk about like wanting to embrace like a more mentally tough mindset, or they want to be more resilient, but yet so many people, the reason there's an industry for it is because they fall short. What do you think are some of the tricks to sustained resilience? How do you make it part of your core and not just something you practice for a week and then you go back to your old ways?
Well, as you well know, resilience is like any muscle. It requires exercise and discipline and focus and consistent discipline and focus. If we want to become more mentally tough, we have to behave in a more mentally tough way. But it's not, it's the whole eat the elephant one bite at a time. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I'm throwing all kinds of Navy SEAL terminology at you.
I love it. I feel like I'm at home. This is great.
Yeah, exactly. It's taking it one step at a time. People, let's say it's a fitness goal and they really have not been that great with their fitness, their wellness, their health, their dietary habits. We don't become.
That's not anybody during coronavirus.
No, I've gained a few pounds, all muscle, of course. It's, you don't become an ultra marathon runner by running 100 miles just out of the gate, unless you're David Goggins. You start by running 5 miles, 10 miles, and you have a program. But again, it goes back to, and I share this in the book, you need to have a plan. Just like we'd have a mission plan for hitting a target in the SEAL teams, you need to have a very specific plan with a very clear and concise objective statement that's memorable, that's inspirational, that's something you emotionally connect to, making sure that you identify the threats and blockages that are going to stand in your way. All of these activities build resilience if you stick to your plan. So you got to have that plan. Write it down, tattoo it on the back of your eyelids, put it in a Google Doc, whatever you need to do so it's visible to you every single day. We'll get into accountability in a minute, but making sure you understand what the threats and blockages are towards achieving whatever that goal is, identifying the resource needs that you need to have to execute on that goal, applying any lessons learned that you or others might have towards achieving that objective. And then, listing the actions, the who, the what, and the when. Everything's got to be time bound. If it's not time bound, it's not a goal. It can be loose sometimes with that time bound nature of a goal. And again, I'll circle back around on how all this builds resilience. But then you have that 60% plan on whatever you're trying to achieve. Maybe the goal is to become more resilient. Maybe it's a fitness goal. Maybe it's saving your small business. But then you need to really, as you need to red team the plan, i.e. poke holes in the plan. Not you. Somebody else, a mentor, a coach, a small team. If it's a business strategic plan, you want to have 4 other people in the organization who have a loose understanding of the goal and what you're trying to achieve, but they're not part of the planning committee or task force or whatever you want to call it. Come in and say, well, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered this? Apply any nuggets of wisdom that you hadn't thought of to whether it's the objective statement or the actions necessary to execute the goal, and then build contingencies into that. So having that plan for whatever you're trying to achieve creates transparency, it creates accountability. You've had people poke holes in the plan, and then having some level of accountability partner, whether it's a spouse, a friend, coworkers, with whatever the goal is that you're trying to achieve, and not a loose accountability mechanism, but something that's in your calendar. Maybe it's a weekly chat, maybe it's every other week. Somebody that's aware of the goal you're trying to achieve that can make sure that you're moving towards that goal. Like if I mentor a lot of young men going into and through the SEAL program, I get all the same questions that I asked when I was exploring the possibility. And I jokingly sometimes I'm like, tell everybody that you're going to become a SEAL. Because a lot of people are going to laugh at you. Like, I get that too. Like I get messages on social media. I'm going to become a SEAL after high school or after college. I'm like, well, you're going to attempt to become a SEAL. But you're somewhere
in the border between arrogance and naivete, and
right.
And neither one is a positive attribute to go into the teams with.
Right. So I'm kind of joking, but obviously it's that creating that certain level of transparency and accountability by having a wide blanket of accountability partners can create sort of that positive peer pressure environment that forces you to achieve that goal. But building resilience takes purposeful, intended action on a consistent basis with doing anything. Your resilience is a result of pushing yourself towards achieving certain goals or navigating adversity in your life, but doing it with intent, with a clear and concise objective. And resilience becomes an offshoot of that. And then you gradually build it over time. And hopefully next time you experience adversity, you move away from causal thinking, the whole why me, why this, why now, to action-oriented thinking. You take what you need to, you reflect, and then you just execute with a plan to navigate whatever that challenge is.
You know, it's interesting. You and it's almost a recurring theme through everything you've said before. Because when we first started talking, you said, even the best leaders will have coaches and mentors, and they'll have advisors. And then throughout this, you were talking about being held accountable. And I think that's something that maybe other folks outside of the SEAL community, not that the SEAL community is the end all be all, but it's a commonality we have. And we certainly know it has blessed us with the opportunity to see the world through a different lens. But I think that's something that other folks on the outside, they go, oh, SEALs are just naturally tough, and that's how they've made it through. And you go, that's not it at all. Yeah. You find your inner toughness, and it's something that you've talked about the whole time is it's sort of like just one of those subliminal themes in all of it is it's your having other people. So how do you build resilience, right? Is yes, you have to, as you said, you have to find a goal. You have to set the goal for it. You have to work towards. You have to make commitment. But it's also having the other people. If you're trying to lose weight, right? There's a reason Weight Watchers is very popular, because you surround yourself with people who hold you accountable. And those who try and do it on their own, I think, and when people say, oh, SEALs are naturally tough. No. It's because you have this melee of hard charging guys who will not allow you to fail. And you know that you're going to work harder because you don't want to catch a rash of shit back at the platoon space about why you performed less than what everybody knows you were capable of, or why you didn't push yourself beyond the limits of, what you thought you were physically, mentally, emotionally capable of. And I think that's an interesting theme that's almost built into our experiences. And maybe it's only, I don't know, maybe it's something that we take for granted, that just naturally having that collective group of folks to hold us accountable is part of it.
It's like that prayer, or that saying, Lord, let me not prove unworthy of my brothers. It's so deeply ingrained in you. They're so emotionally and deeply connected to it. And going back to resilience, because, I always ask by either mentors or just people interested in the nuances of SEAL training. Well, how do people get through? What's the secret sauce? Which we know there isn't one. It's a different journey for every soul that experiences it. But with the SEAL Family Foundation, with which I'm on the executive board, we raise money for the and active operators. We often do tours of BUDS, as you know, and there's always tons of different questions, and those questions are how do guys get through it, or have you guys done any research on the physical, mental, cognitive, emotional attributes of students more likely to successfully navigate that funnel? And the answer is yes. As you know, we have probably millions of dollars, or at least a lot of invested time and resources, because, well, quite frankly, we would like to grow the ranks of naval special warfare, but the training is so difficult that that funnel usually has the same result every single time, or pretty consistently. And the data reflects the less measurable elements of grit, resilience, passion, purpose, emotional connectivity to service, not just service in the military, but service at the most elite level. So I call it the 3 Ps: of passion, purpose, and persistence. And that's what, as you know, that's what gets people through. It's not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest. Plenty of those people who fit the bill of what you might think of a SEAL on a poster would look like quit in the first 5 minutes of hoeing. It's a wonderful, interesting scientific experience of mental fortitude, resilience, and the physical and mental connectivity of how people react in adverse situations, just like the current environment that we're in right now. Some people have immediately hit the ground running and are taking action towards what they need to do. They're applied for that PPP loan immediately. They started rethinking what their time and resources that they invest in, personally and within their business, if they run a small business or a division within a company. I know, and personally too, we started we started looking at, all our bills and the crap that we waste money on every single month. It was astonishing. I was like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that anymore. And that will be for individuals and for organizations that'll come out
Whose
of this.
idea was it to have all these kids anyway?
Oh, seriously. And then now, boom, we have a fire team. Yes. As we talked before we started recording, we found out that we do have a baby on the way. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
COVID
Thank
baby.
you. Well, my wife's been trying to find a way to get me off the road, and who knew? It would just take a little global pandemic and then boom, we get pregnant. So, but it's and obviously, as you know, there's all types of behavioral science and psychological research that shows that people that experience horribly adverse situations, whether it be surviving the Holocaust or a POW camp or combat or losing a business, the death of a spouse, all these things, oftentimes when you're approaching it the appropriate way with the right amount of assistance from others, we come out stronger. We come out enlightened. We come out typically emotionally more mature, more respectful of others, less selfish, less self-absorbed. We see the world through a different lens. And I think the organizations and the people that are going to come out of this the strongest are already thinking of it in that way. And that is a goal.
Do you, and anybody who follows you knows that your experience in the SEAL teams created a large part, and I think the same for all of us, right? Anybody who you go through what we go through, and it's transformative. It's not just oh well, that was really an eye opener. It's transformative, and no matter who goes in, the person you come out on the other end is transformed, and there's you open your eyes to where you can't close them, you can't unsee things. And I've asked this question for a lot of colleagues that were in the teams. So much of what we experience has formed who we are today. How has being a SEAL, how has it hindered or hurt or limited you in any ways? And it's sort of it's a tough question, and it's something I'm always fascinated to hear other guys say.
How real do you want to get?
Yeah.
It's a great question. I love being transparent about this stuff, and I think it's actually part of the culture change that we're trying to initiate in Naval Special Warfare. And a lot of our work we do in the SEAL Family Foundation is around family resilience and mental health and wellness, not just for the operator, but for the families, and reducing the divorce rate, because it's not the movies. It's not all guns and glory. It's quite the opposite. It's you see the horrors of war-torn countries. You take life. You see non-combatants injured and children without parents. I mean, it's horrible stuff. War is an ugly, ugly, ugly thing. And the burden of service and sacrifice for anybody in the military, especially that sees combat, is not just about the fighting or going down range. It's that lifelong going back to the same word, but lifelong burden that the operator carries. And oftentimes, regardless of I wasn't in the SEAL teams as long as you, but the time that I was in was very, very busy. All deployments very kinetic. And so some of that is what has been a challenge for me, and I know for a lot of people, and we don't like to talk about it too much. Again, we're trying to change that mindset, both with active operators. It's not just veterans. We have this misconception, or people have this misconception that dealing with PTSD or the effects of TBI, traumatic brain injury, are for the operator after he's left the team. So it's right now. It's for the operator who's in the teams 15 years in. He's done 4 combat tours, explosive breach every night, and he's got TBI and he's got PTSD. And he's dealing with these things while being an active operator, while trying to keep the marriage healthy and raise children and do all these things. It's the here and now around mental health for veterans, and how they need to responsibly think about it for the rest of their lives. I mean, post-traumatic stress symptoms sometimes don't emerge 10 years after the last traumatic event that occurred. I learned that from a VA counselor I was talking to when I was transitioning out. I thought that was interesting. She's like, I counsel Vietnam vets that had never sought any type of counseling or therapy, because the old school, silent warrior, keep your mouth shut, suffer in silence.
We used to call it shell shock, right?
Yeah.
Turns out it's PTSD, and your bell's been rung a number of times, and it dramatically affects the brain. Who knew?
Yeah, astonishing. But so I've struggled with some of that, and then other just less important things around going back to leadership, just making sure that I continually develop my leadership and management style for the civilian world and for multi-generational workforces and leading change. Not all elements from NSW apply in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
I know that's very tough to say, but it's true. And so there's been things like that for us. It's also just the loss of teammates. I mean, it's our class leader died during Hell Week, and that's a rare thing, as you know. And he was a intel officer at SEAL Team 1. Very well respected, just amazing guy. And obviously being in the community as an intel officer, that was a stepping stone towards then joining the program and coming to Buds. And phenomenal guy. He's up at Fort Rosecrans, buried there. But we were winter Hell Week, not that it necessarily matters, but he had severe pneumonia, and that caused pulmonary edema. And we were in the pool on Thursday morning doing the caterpillar swim, and his lungs were already filling with fluid. He'd been not having any good med checks. They, for whatever reason, let him continue. And and he drowned in the pool. And that was sort of our first eye opener. The CEO of Buds at the time, they ran us back across the street, put us in the classroom, and we waited and not really sure. We didn't know that John had passed yet. And so 2 hours later, he came in and he just walked straight to the front of the room, true old school frogman fashion, no emotion, just said, "Gentlemen, listen up. Lieutenant Scott was pronounced dead at 7 a.m. Lieutenant Parado, you're taking over as class leader." He goes, "Guys, get used to this. This will not be the first teammate you're going to lose." And then he just walked out like it was another fucked up day at Buds. We were all like, in all seriousness, it was horrifying. It was at most.
And we have come a long way. Just to be clear for anybody watching, we have come a long way since.
Yeah. I mean, he was, old school frogman. But it was if this was a movie, it would have been called Foreshadowing, because literally 4 months later, the week between my transition from Buds to SEAL qualification training was 9/11. And so that's when, of course, as you know, it was the whole transformation of both mindset and the organization, which has been ongoing, being SEALs at war now for 20 years, and the military at war, and the nation at war. So there's been all kinds of challenges, and that's one of the reasons that I continue to serve by being mentoring guys in the program or being on the board of the SEAL Family Foundation. Actually, also this week, for those who don't know, is actually PTSD Awareness Month, June. And so we're launching a new company as well called Veteran Wellness. It's veteran-wellness.com. And it's
sorry, veteran-wellness.com.
Yeah. And it's a line of
you and your wife started this, right?
Yes. And it's a line of high quality CBD products. We're starting with just a few products for now. We'll expand that into making it a content hub and a resource for veterans and also non-veterans. It's not just, we say, it's battle tested, veteran approved, but it's for everyone. Everyone who in the world, unfortunately right now, is dealing with insomnia, anxiety, and some physical pain. Obviously veterans experience that, but non-veterans do too in the battlefield of life. And every purchase, a portion of proceeds of every purchase goes to a handful of veteran initiatives, especially veteran health and wellness initiatives. So it continues. It's a platform for also giving back as well. So.
And that goes with not only running, taking point, but also having a new baby. Why not start another new business in amidst the global pandemic?
Hard charge and violent execution, my friend.
There it is, right here, ladies and gentlemen. If you wonder why SEALs are renowned for their resilience, it's and their tenacity. It's the guys who get pregnant and have a current business, have 3 other kids, and let's have another baby.
Just layer on something else.
At some
point, if it doesn't have pain, anxiety, and adversity as part of it, it's not worth pursuing.
I guess the last thing I want to say is you had talked, and it was something I was watching a bunch of videos before of your videos before we jumped on the call, and yesterday I think I watched a video where you had said Emotional intelligence is about, what it was exactly you said. It was about discriminating between different types of feelings and categorizing them appropriately. And I really found that to be a pretty profound statement, because we have a tendency when we talk about emotional intelligence, just to lump it in like, oh, well, feelings are feelings. But you talked about categorizing or discriminating between different types of feelings. I don't know if you remember where the context, but I thought, again, I do a lot of leadership conversations with other folks that are out there, helping people be better leaders. But this was one, every now and again, you hear a statement or something that just like, well, that's a different thought or something that I've heard before. And I wonder if you could just elaborate on that, because I thought it was kind of an interesting take.
Sure. It kind of goes back to your point earlier about authentic leadership. I mean, two of the biggest blocks of developmental training we provide our clients is emotional intelligence in their leadership and organizational development programs. Because like you said before, you can't transform or improve an organization or a team without continually working on improving ourselves as leaders, as managers, as teammates, leading from the front, leading from the rear, having both of those perspectives, knowing when to lead and when to follow. And it's tough to do that. It's easier for some than others sometimes. Some people score higher on the emotional intelligence quotient than others, as we know. But having that level of self-awareness, which is a core tenet of emotional intelligence, helps us understand how our feelings, our thoughts, our behavior impacts not our own performance, but the performance of others, how we lead, how we interact from a social interaction standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, how we communicate, and how that impacts the team, their level of engagement, their morale. And that is, again, love the term burden of command, because from a leadership perspective, regardless of the size of your team, there are so many. All eyeballs are on you. Your behavior, every single word that comes out of your mouth. I'm going to stay away from politics right now, but you can glean what you want from what I'm saying. Everything. And being visibly present, saying the right thing, not saying the wrong thing. When you do say the wrong thing, owning it, and being transparent with your team about the fact that you're also human. It's not about being robotic and overcompensating when we feel that we've said the wrong thing or our behavior's been inconsistent, which is a big and very challenging aspect of leadership, is inconsistency. Saying one thing, partially doing it, but not doing it all the way, or rolling out a new initiative and then it falls off 3 months later, and then we do that again next year. And the respect people have for you as a leader starts to dwindle when they know that you're not actively trying to increase your ability to communicate, to interact. And like you said before, with today's multi-generational workforces, understanding how to motivate different types of people in different ways, not easy. If you have 10 direct reports, which I argue is too much, I say 7 is probably the max. Each of those 7 people or 10 people are probably motivated by different things, or some of the same things. There might be some commonalities, but understanding how to motivate each of those individuals, how to communicate with each of those individuals. We teach our 5 coaching conversations, and they're different based on that person's tenure, their level of experience, their age, their experience within the organization or other organizations. And you can test these things and see where people fall on that, but it's just understanding that's not enough. We first have to ensure that we can understand how each of our different feelings and categorizing those feelings, and then you can manage them. Once you label them, categorize them, and be able to manage them, you gradually become more self-aware in the immediate moment. Where you walk into the office, you pick up the phone, and you think you're going to crush it that day, and the first email you get is your biggest client canceling their contract. Stuff like that. And then you go to the doctor later at lunchtime and you tell you got prostate cancer. And,
or you're having another baby.
And then you find out you're having another baby. And then you go back to the office and you are really not feeling super comfortable about just anything at all. But again, we have to be able to control our emotions, not in a robotic way, but in a way that doesn't negatively impact the team, the organization, and those around us. And taking that stress home too. So emotional intelligence could be a much larger conversation, but it is one of the most important elements of leadership today. It didn't used to be as important. People would hear about it and scoff, be like, that's soft. Those soft skills are not necessary for the execution of my organization. These days, it absolutely is critically important to success.
Last question. I know we're getting at the close to the hour mark. Last question.
Yes, I am wearing pants.
Yes. Are you?
I am actually. I'm wearing jeans. Yeah. Normally I'm wearing PT shorts, but
I don't know why. It really became awkward when I was like, "Are you?" Yeah. I was like, there's some sort of strange curiosity. I feel like there's some sort of social movement that is going to be angry that I got excited about that. I don't know which one it is, but
who cares? Who cares?
So you can't. That's a tenet of leadership. You can't please everybody all the time, right?
Yeah, you cannot.
Joe Exotic. He hires you as a consultant, a leadership consultant. What's your number one priority to help him?
There's two answers.
I'm literally making this shit up on the fly, dude. This is and now that I'm going I want to see where we go with this.
Well, I'll answer one in a somewhat serious way first. One that is the relationships between a service provider and a client in any capacity, whether it's B2B, B2C, rarely works unless there's shared values on both sides. I don't know if you've experienced that before. I'm sure you have, but when you're working with a customer or a client and you don't share their values, they have misguided values, at least your perception of misguided values, that relationship rarely ever works. So my first answer would be I would never work with someone like that because it wouldn't work out. It wouldn't work out.
Wait, you don't share the same values?
It's probably a little different, slightly different. Although I would love to have a tiger. But what would be the first step?
Because I don't know if I have an answer for that.
I don't know if I do either. Developing him as a leader. Well,
yeah, I think I have to tell him to release the anger towards Carol. You have to accept some losses, right? Accepting loss is a tenet of leadership, and learning from your losses and not starting a YouTube channel that tears your enemies apart. That would probably be. I haven't really thought this.
That was a great answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking through this as we go. I don't know. I'm gonna have to really. This could be my next. This could be my first book. Yeah.
The whole book about that guy.
I need to get the book written like today because he's going to be yesterday's news by the time these like murder hornets become.
Better get on it.
Hey man, I like to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on the hour. Hey Brent, thank you so much for joining us, man, and thanks for your insights. Where can folks find you on the interweb?
Sure. Our company website, current organization is takingpointleadership.com. That new business, veteran-wellness.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm on Instagram now. I'm starting to navigate the world of Instagram. People said that I should, so starting to do that. So I'm just Brent_Gleeson on Instagram. So give me a follow because I'm trying to build my follower base. I'm not sure what benefit that has to most people, but
it's self-esteem. That's what it is.
Exactly.
And I can tell you need that. You need that right now. So
10 new followers today. Feeling great about myself. But hey, Jonathan, thanks so much for your time. This was fun. Would love to come back sometime and let's catch up offline.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I go, the Embrace the Suck, it comes out
December 22nd. So right after the election, half the nation's going to be pissed off. Everybody will have had a crappy year. So hopefully and selfishly, the timing is perfect. It's actually up on Amazon right now. If you just Google Embrace the Suck, Amazon, Brent Gleeson, it's up there. You can pre-order it, but it comes out December 22nd.
And last thing, only because you put it out, we're huge fans of veteran advocacy here. SEAL Family Foundation. Is it SEALFamilyFoundation.org?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So again, we do a lot of work with family resilience programs within the community and the commands to support the families of our fallen and active operators, increase retention, decrease divorce rates, help children, medical, and all the elements you can imagine that the unfortunate side of what we have to do to help those families.
And you said it. You said it. This is a way that you are continuing to serve, man. And as a veteran and as working for a veteran company, man, we thank you for continuing to find a way to take care of our veteran brothers and sisters.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, brother. Hey, thanks again, man. We'll chat soon.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Greencastle Podcast. Please be sure to give us a like, a thumbs up, a share. You can find us at greencastleconsulting.com/podcast or on all the major podcast channels and the social media channels, including our YouTube channel. Thanks very much. We'll see you on the next episode.